the producer of this CD. Once again, thank you for this invitation to this obviously very important meeting. I can tell that the participants have put a lot of time and effort, and when I walked into the room, I noticed the colors and the dresses, and I noticed tradition. I want to thank the Creator this evening for this time that we have together, for the earth that we stand on, for all that we have in this day, because sometimes I can tell by the opening prayer that the people here are conscious of the Creator, of where we have come from. And every day I make an effort to remember where I come from. We're talking about refugee. This is what this is about, this meeting. And as we sit here in this building, in this room, in this country that we call Canada, we are comfortable. We are no longer afraid. And we have a home. Everyone here has a home. This land is First Nations land. This is our home. What does it mean to have refuge? It comes from the Latin refugium, refugiare, to retreat. Re means back, and fugere means to flee. And it says, see fugitive. It means to have shelter or protection from danger or difficulty. It means a person, a thing that gives shelter or help or comfort. It is a place of safety, of shelter, or safe retreat. It's an expediency or shift. It's an action that is taken to escape trouble or difficulty. Refugee, the Latin refugiare, French refugee. A person who flees from home or country to seek refuge elsewhere, as in a time of war or a political or religious persecution. There are millions of people in Canada, and other than First Nations, all the people and the generations who have come after the first people who came from Europe and from France, from wherever they came from somewhere. And they came here for a purpose. And we are the people that they found. We are sitting in a building called Columbus Building. And they claim that Columbus founded this land. Well, Columbus got lost. That's how he got to this land. And ever since he came, they kept on coming. And coming, and coming. And our people didn't know what they were coming from, where they were coming from, or why they were coming. They said that they were friends. And they said that we would be treated equally. We are some 500 years later, and you're standing and looking at somebody who was taken from her home when I was 6 years old. Just as those little children are sitting around that table, I was taken at the same age as they are, and I was put in a residential school, which meant that I could not speak my language. That meant I could not be with my brothers and sisters. That meant I was living very much in a prison for children. Most of us never did go back to our families. Many of us were scooped after that. I was scooped when I was 13 and put in many different institutions and never permitted to go back home again until I was 19. And at 19, they have what's called transfer payments. That's the treaty that we have with the government, that we are supposed to have free education. That's almost gone now because they put a stop to that just very recently. So that treaty is not going to be fulfilled. And many of us who are on these streets in downtown Toronto left home when they were that age. And they never did receive the attention, the care. In fact, we received abuse in those places. We were not cared for. So many Native people grew up without that support from family, drifted across this great nation of ours, and here we find ourselves dropped into cities just like you. But the government of Canada, it will tell you how they take care of us, how they give us houses, how they give us an education. Well, you have to ask, why then are there so many homeless? And why do they have to eat in church basements? And why did the government only give us $3,000 for every year for compensation? We were in those schools that they apologized for. Why would you make an apology if there was nothing wrong? And that settlement amounted to $250 a month for 7 years for the time that I was in that school. And when it came time for that settlement in 2007, only 2 years ago, I said, no, I'm not taking your settlement, and I don't want your apology. Because you brought that settlement in the back door, you snuck it in just like you sneak in your other policies. It holds no water for us. It wasn't done in honesty. It wasn't done with us in mind. It was done with the government in mind. And they took most of that $2.5 billion and put it into bureaucracy and put it into programs and services. And where do we stand? I don't even have an income right now. I've been without an income for 18 months. I can't go to the social services because they say, no, you rent a house and you rent rooms to people. That's an income for you. That's hardly an income. It hardly pays the rent. It hardly pays for the gas. So we are not living here as Native people like most Canadians do, who have prospered. And that's why people come to this country. They come here to prosper. But I look at prosperity and I think, whose prosperity is this? And what kind of prosperity is it? And at whose expense? And that's what I ask myself. I've been in radio. I was in radio at CKLN for 8 years. And even that was pulled out from under us because over 30 programmers at CKLN Ryerson Radio, activists, many of us who stood together on the front lines in demonstrations with the people supporting Haiti, supporting the people in Palestine, supporting the people in Iraq and Afghanistan. We all stood together out there. But one day in 2008, it started to come down. And they gave the papers to over 30 programmers that they had to leave. And when they didn't leave, they posted police at the door. And when I attempted to try to put an interview out over the air as to why they were doing this, they cut me to dead air. So tell me, how much freedom do I really have in this country? And you have to ask yourself, how much freedom do you have in this country? I was in a church for over 30 years. I was in there 24 years. I was married to a Jewish man for over 23 years. I'm Native. I came out of those schools knowing nothing. I hadn't even heard the word Jewish before in my life. I knew nothing. And that's the kind of education I received. So since that time, I've had to educate myself as to where did I come from? How did it happen? Why is it that I have no home now? Why is it that I'm just wandering around without a family? Why? Where do I go to find refuge? We live in this country as First Nations people, and we still live our political wars. We have the Mohawk people just over around Montreal, Ganasatake. Just within the last couple months, 300 police went right on to their reserve, accusing them of being criminals, and saying that they're going to do that right across Canada on every native reserve. Is that living freedom? No, we don't live freedom. We survive. I'm a survivor. I was a survivor of residential school. I'm a survivor still. I don't take a cent from the government. I don't want their money. It stinks. When you tell me I have human rights, well, just look at all the prisons across this country that are filled 36% Native men and women. Why is it that still most of our children across this country are being taken and put into homes? It's called assimilation, and we just won't give in. And that's why they call us resistors. Are you still resisting? I was in a church for over 20 years. I know how comfortable it got. I didn't even know what happened outside those walls until I came to Toronto. And then I found out what my people were living like. And then I found out what could happen to me when I got thrown in jail. It can happen very, very quickly. And all they have to do is charge you. It's simple. Is that freedom? I've seen a lot of things happen on these streets in downtown Toronto. I've seen police mobs twice, both black men, who were yelling that they were innocent. And nobody could do anything. Where do you go? Where do they go to find refuge? Where do the people, your people from Africa, from all over the world, where do they go? I've been inside these mental hospitals, because that's where they put my son. I saw a lot of lost African people in there. I asked one man, I said, how long have you been in here? He said, 4 years. I said, how long were you in Canada before you got in here? He said, 1 year. How many people of your people are inside those prisons and inside those mental institutions, and who cares to find out? Until they are free, we cannot be free. We cannot go on and continue to say we want to live in prosperity if they cannot live in prosperity. I brought something with me that I'm just going to finish. I actually brought so much material here, which I usually did when I went to radio. I'd bring a whole suitcase and have to read, 5 pages. But this is for us to remember. I was reading, actually, I wanted to read something for you, but I think it's in my books here. I can't even think where. But there's 2 stories that really, really touched me. And I was watching one night a documentary on Darfur. I remember my son telling me about Darfur. And at the same time, he was going through really big difficulties because he was having troubles with mental illness, and so he was so concerned about what was going on in the world. He was telling me. But it wasn't until I saw that documentary and I saw all those people who were displaced and having to live in refugee camps, who said, you know, my goats and my cows, they just came and they just killed them. They just burned my house and I had to run. And the thing that most touched me, I think, most of all, was this woman. And she had found this little baby whose mother was killed. And she held that little baby in her arms and she looked down and she just said, do you want to come home with me? Do you want to come home to my house? And I think that really touched me because it just showed me the resiliency that human beings have. And that how people can just pick up and just keep on going, no matter what. And I saw the women that stayed behind, and I saw them with those shells wrapped around them across their chest. Shells. And I saw them sitting there with those rifles on their laps. And they decided to stay and decided to fight. Those are the people that we cannot forget. When you talk about refuge, think of your own refuge. And I welcome you to this land of refuge as a First Nations person. And I wish you that you would have a life of peace and the life of prosperity that you came here for. But we can't forget those who are still left behind and who don't need to flee their homes. No one should have to flee their homes. And right now, this is bigger than us. Because right now, we've got big corporations in those lands because they want them for the oil, for the gold, for the diamonds, just like they do here. So that's what I think of, and I think all the time of, yesterday I was in the supermarket, and man, I wanted a bottle of Coca-Cola, and I had to talk myself out of that bottle of Coca-Cola, because Coca-Cola is killing people in Colombia. They call it Killer Coke there. So I refuse that bottle of Coca-Cola simply because I know that that company is killing people. And it'll change water into Coca-Cola and it'll leave your water poisoned. So those are very real choices that we can make every day. I have to choose. Am I going to take that if it's going to do harm? Those are serious choices, and those are the only choices we have left, because it's our only way of fighting back. Because now the world runs on money. And if they don't sell it, they can't live. But in order to protect the earth, the water, for your children, for the next generation, we are going to have to make choices. Serious choices. Not choices that are going to keep us living in luxury, but choices that are going to keep us living. So now I don't look at my life so much anymore as not having a place to be or a place to live, or I realize that, you know, as the prayer says, we have to start looking at this earth as a place that is God-given. It's a blessed place. And if we don't start treating it like that, no one is going to have refuge. This is our paradise. And if we don't start fighting for her, there is no refuge anywhere else. If you haven't got a ticket to Mars, or wherever, or the moon. So I want to thank you very much for listening to me. I always tend to get too serious, more serious than I'd like to be sometimes, but we live in a very serious time. And we need to think seriously. And we need to think. For the sake of our children. Because they are the next generation. And we don't want them to have to find refuge. And we don't want them to be refugees. We want them to have a home. Wherever they are on this earth, we want them to have a home. And we've got to start putting that out there to them. This is their home. This is our home. And we have to take care of it. Thank you very much.
A round of applause again. Thank you so much. We'll move to refreshments now, so that at least I can get more clap, because I think some people are looking at me with ugly face now, and I catch the message. So I will want us to talk about refreshment, so I can see smile on people's face, because I'm watching some face and I'm afraid now. So, Madam, how do we start? Do they want to serve themselves, or you want to? Okay, so we are going to start from the high table. They are going to serve themselves, so that nobody complain that somebody is giving them bone or too much beef or less beef. So I will urge the high table, your indulgence, to let us go and then serve ourselves, so we can follow from the first table, second table, sequentially. So, sir, I will want you to start, sir. Chief Adeniyi. Thank you, sir. Sorry, sir, I've got volunteer. They prefer to serve the high table. But you have to be mindful of the meat and the fish, so that there is no complaint. So I'm always conscious of that. So they are going to serve the high table. In the meantime, while that is going on, let's take our time. Where is Mrs. Temowo? Hello, ma. Yeah, so I want you on the floor. No, I purposely didn't put that. We hide that from people on the program. So we want her to dance for Refugee. So you will see how she can dance and see what she can do to, at least, to commemorate Refugee Day. So just wait and watch. Thank you. resistance. I will implore people to join her so they don't accuse me. Please, I'm going to join too. Okay, I'm going to join too. So you are free to join, please.
Joma, Oma did what you are